Hi, this is Danny Jones. I'm here in the control room at ATR Recording in Katy, Texas. And I'm here to go over some procedures that I use, give you some tips, and show you how I can help you get professional sounding recordings. The first thing, if you're going to be setting up, depending on what kind of recording format you're going to use, I'm going to talk to you specifically about using computer recording today. That seems to be what most people are using. There are many different formats out there: Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic, many, and you know, they all work. What I'm using currently is Cubase. And so what I have done with this, and I will kind of take you through this. First of all, we need to set up what we call a new project. It's extremely important that you become very, very good at labeling everything. You know, when you first start out, you think, oh, I'll remember what that is. Actually, no, you won't. So you need to make sure that you're naming everything really well. What I've done is, first of all, we set up audio tracks. For example, add track. And in this case, audio tracks, and I'm wanting actually mono tracks because I'm using a track for each of the microphones that I have. So you see I just had another there. I would put these, let's see, I'm going to go back up here and go to number 4 that we used. I put these empty tracks in between these two. I used 2 microphones on this. Peluso 2251 and AKG 414, and I had them on separate tracks purposely, and I just added a blank track between each of them just because when you get to a lot of tracks, they're just more difficult to read. So that's why I chose to do that. Before I record, I actually put the name here in this little block over here so that when the track is in record, it actually prints the name on the track. You don't have to do that, but you'll get to a point where when it says audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, and you do that about 50 or 100 times, it's like, wow, what is that? And if anything ever gets mixed up, it's a bit of a nightmare. I'm speaking from experience. So put the title in there, and that way you always have it. You know exactly what you have with each file there. In this case, I recorded everything a sample rate of 48 and 24-bit. You can choose whatever, but that is a pretty safe bet and is pretty standard these days. And make sure that you do have everything set. If you have a sample rate that's wrong and you try to sync with something that's a different sample rate, you're gonna find that either if you have a voice, it's really slow or it's really fast. After I have audio tracks set up, then I decide to go ahead and set up a group track. Now in Cubase it's called group. In some of the other programs it can be referred to as a bus track. But instead of assigning everything out to, say, stereo out, for example, like I have here, then let me find a track here, here. I set up a group track called drums, and I will assign all of those particular tracks to the drum track. And therefore, and then I will set up, in this case, this was part of a template that I didn't use all of, but I decided to use 2 effects tracks. In this case was one reverb. This was so Universal Audio EMT 250, which is a digital reverb, although all of this is digital. And then another one here called, it's another Universal Audio Ocean Way, which has, it's a reverb, but it's a different sounding kind of verb than the EMT. So since I have used these before, I decided to go ahead and have those set up, which I did use. Now let's go back up to this etude number 4. As I was listening to the mics, I decided that I could probably use just a little bit of equalization on this. And And let me say this too, if you're really new at doing this, be extremely careful in how you use equalization, because you can actually really mess things up. I mean, EQ done nicely can certainly add to the sound, but do really be careful. And also, let me just say this, interject this, you really need to know your speakers really well that you're listening to, because if you're not really comfortable, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, including me, you do a mix with something and you're trusting the speakers that you're listening to, and then you go out and you listen to another source and you go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? You know, this sounds terrible. There's either way too much bottom end or there's way too much high end. So do a lot of listening. Listen to a lot of music on the speakers that you're listening to, and please keep that in mind. But getting back to this. Okay, we've added, what did I add here? 4.3 dB at 3,432 hertz, basically 3.4 kilohertz. And let's see, actually did nothing to the 414 in terms of equalization. And I don't think, I didn't do any sends from the individual mics. I grouped those together. And how I came up with a level on it, I have here, which is this is a fader port 16 that PreSonus makes. Faders are wonderful. I know sometimes a lot of people will use a mouse, and sometimes it's a necessary evil, but that's not really the best way when you're mixing, because you can't move those faders kind of at the same time. So basically, in this case, I have a fader set. This was the 414, which you can see was quite a bit less, because I preferred the sound to the Peluso to begin with. And let's play a little bit of it. And then I brought this in. This was a little more distant mic. And it's not that this is a bad sound, but it was just a little more room than I wanted to actually put in it. So, you know, I brought this back to where it's just kind of a touch. Almost to a point of where, as soon as I start to hear it, that's enough. So we just leave it there. Okay, now, as I mentioned, these are assigned to a group. So the group, I was really creative and called it Drums. So here we are. And the drums, let's see, I didn't really insert anything in there, I believe, that I kept. I tried. I do experiment with different sounds, with different compressors, and if it doesn't really enhance, then I just decide, no, let's don't use it. So I did no equalization on the group. On the sends, I did have some both to the Ocean Way and to the EMT 250. I'll give you a little example about going overboard with this. For example, let's say we're still playing this, and I'm going to add quite a bit more of the, say, the Ocean Way. You can see that certainly did change the sound quite a bit. And if I want to go even more crazy, let's put even more of that reverb. Okay, sounds like we're next door somewhere. And again, I can't stress to you enough about how you need to be careful with these effects, because sometimes a little can go a very long way. Let's see here let's back this up. Now, over here on this reverb, I have this set as a decay time, which is how long it takes for the reverb to actually stop. This is like 1.2 seconds if I wanted to go crazy. Let's just say, find a better way of demonstrating that here. Let's go back to our sounds. Oh yeah, that's a really good sound. Okay, obviously that was not a good idea, so that's why I didn't do that. I just did that as an example of some of the things, you know, that you can do. I mean, that was like 3.3 seconds. Let's bring it back down to this point. I mean, the only reason that you use reverb is if you think that the sound, which I thought the sound in here was just a bit on the dry sound for what we needed for this particular piece. So I wanted to add a little more life to it, and that's why I chose to do that. And it's just enough. And again, it's almost as soon as you hear it, that's probably enough. Of course, here in the studio, I have an advantage of having, I have 3 different set of speakers that I listen to here, in addition to headphones. And then when I do a mix, I will also do an MP3 mix that I will actually email to myself and open it up on my my cell phone, and I will play it back and I'll listen to it there. You know, lots of people listen these days, you know, with earbuds, cell phones, iPads, laptop computers, and it's very important that you really listen into all of these mediums that you can, because if it doesn't sound good somewhere, then maybe there's an adjustment that you can make that will help that out. And once you get something that sounds pretty good in all the speakers, then you should be there. One other thing I will point out is your stereo bus. And again, this can be called different with different recording programs, but in this case, let's see what I did use. Well, in this case, I set up a high-pass filter here at 75 hertz, just so that any rumble that could be there, I mean, again, this is snare drum, so there's really no reason to have any deep lows in this. And sometimes when you're recording on stages, even in auditoriums, you can have air conditioning rumble. So this does a pretty good job of getting rid of that. I know sometimes I see that I didn't do it on this particular one, but I may sometimes also put in like a low-pass filter that would take care of some of the really high noise. Sometimes really, I mean, heaven forbid, if you get into a situation where you have like fluorescent lights, then those are sometimes a problem. But I have, this is an emulation of a Pultec equalizer that I gave just a little bit of brightness here at 8 kilohertz. Due to the nature of this, even though it says boost and attenuate at 100, the waveforms act a little bit differently in terms of, I should say, the EQ curve, rather, acts a little differently. So I actually have almost 1 dB, a boost at 100 hertz, and then attenuate at 1 dB. And this particular plugin just adds kind of a nice sound to it. So sometimes I'll put it in even if I'm not really EQing very much, because it just does add something to the sound. And then I have a compressor that basically wasn't really compressing very much at all. Matter of fact, let's see. Yeah, I don't really see much at all. But again, it was one of those, it's kind of there, and it adds a nice little sound to, I think, the overall. I'll play you one without it in just a moment. And then, well, and I have a multi-scope. Basically what this is going on here, I can just see what's going on frequency-wise. So I can see if there's any real problems, then kind of gives me really just a tool to find something that I might need to fix. And then overall, I have a limiter. This is a brick wall limiter, and what it's going to do is, if anything like gets past me as far as a transient with anything else, this will keep it from actually overloading and going into distortion. Limiters can be extremely helpful. So let's see if we're going to, let's see that we have enough music going here. Let's see, go back to number 4. Yeah, let's go to this. And I'm going to put this in bypass. You see it got a little bit softer, but also just the texture of the sound changed a little bit. And back in. So this is how I went about recording and mixing the Advanced Snare Drum Studies by Mitchell Peters, performed by Ethan Ahmad. A lot of what we do here and that you would do is subjective. There's more than one way to do everything, but this should give you some ideas for you to try. Feel free to leave comments about anything that, any questions that you might have, and also anything that you particularly liked or maybe didn't like about what we did. Subscribe. We will be doing more so that you can keep up to date with what we're doing, because we're going to have a lot more information in terms of our recording techniques. Plenty of things to come besides just solo snare drum, but miking drum set and different ways to mic drum set. So again, subscribe and you will hear from us. Thank you again for watching and have a wonderful day.